On this episode, we feature a very special guest. He is part of this new healing movement that is far different than traditional Western medicine. Holistic physician for over 3 decades, author of The Whole Health Diet, Customized Healing, and many other health beneficial books. Today, he is here to talk about his book and documentary, The Way of Miracles, Accessing Your Superconsciousness. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mark Mincolla to the show. How you doing, doctor?
Doing great. Thanks very much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said, it's an honor to have you on here. Now your book definitely has touched me in many ways because I struggle with a lot of health issues myself, and I think what really got me so excited about your book was that there's a lot of similarities to a book that I currently been doing a lot of his teachings and a lot of his practices. Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Sure, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what got me excited was there's just so much similarity between your guys' work. So I'm excited about that. Your I guess your health and then your sudden downfall of health, I can kind of relate to personally. Is that kind of what got this all started for you?
Well, actually, what the plan was, going back about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, I was really drawn to the idea of trying to share some of the magnificence, some of the uncommon magnificence that I've gone through in my work. So many people think about things like miracle possibilities, and they just think, not there, not happening, not real, doesn't exist. I think there's 4 different components to miracles: reject, accept, expect, and create. Those are the 4 possibilities of miracles. So I felt like, for the most part, most of the people in the culture that we live in don't really openly accept the possibility, the notion of miracles. There's a lot of people that are starting to maybe turn around and move into the realm of acceptance, but we don't go much further than that. So there's rejection or acceptance. That's kind of where most people are stuck. So I've been doing my work for 37 years. And I've had so many terminally ill patients, so many very sick people, so many people with horrible health conditions that were irretrievable by medical standards, that I actually have taken part in a miracle healing process with. I mean, many thousands of people. And so I still look out the window at the world, thinking that the world that I live in is clueless about the world that I live in. And I mean, I'm just so completely stunned with the fact that miracles happen every day in our world, every day. And they're truly remarkable healing stories that are worth telling and that are worth awakening the world with. And for the most part, it disturbs me. And that's what got me into this, to answer your question. The thing got me into this, I felt very disturbed about the fact that the world is such a place of doubting, negativity, disconnection from limitless possibilities, and to take my story and to awaken the world with it in a way that actually brings them into the realm of miracle making, miracle beyond miracle acceptance, into miracle expectancy and miracle making, creating, if you will. So I wanted to tell stories about patients that have had tumors that cleared up. I want to tell stories about patients that had Parkinson's that are running 3 miles a day now. I want to tell stories about people who are told that they were infertile and they couldn't have kids. They got 3 children. I mean, these are stories that need to be told. And it's not about puffing me up. That's not the story. The story is I'm not going to live forever. And the reality is that I feel like before I leave, I have a responsibility to share the treasures that I've stumbled on. And I say stumbled on because I didn't expect these things to turn out the way they did, but they did. So I've been fortunate to be able to take part in these miraculous experiences, these wonderful stories of healing that the world is just clueless about and not inclined to embrace, accept, or accept as possible. And I felt like it's an important mission in my life to take these stories and to awaken the possibility of every life that I can touch, every person I can touch, and to climb them up that ladder, to take them from reject to accept, to expect, to create. That's the goal.
And that's important, right? I mean, you talk about that in your book, about rejecting miracles versus accepting in the making of miracles, right? I mean,
Sure.
that's kind of, what is that kind of part of the first process to healing, right? Is to be able just to be, maybe to accept the fact that, miracles can happen.
Absolutely, no question about it. I mean, I think that's a starting point. The starting point is a place of hope. And I think that, there's so many people that are hopeless in our culture. So many people that are hopeless for so many reasons. In fact, you could perhaps make the general statement that people are more hopeless now than they've ever been. So I think it does start with inspiring people with possibilities. So if I share the possibilities that I've experienced with them, and they can inspire and bring hope, that's the starting point.
That's wonderful. Wonderfully said. I think a lot of that's ingrained in our culture, right? On just the way we believe, in the materialistic type of views, and that's all there is what you see is what you get kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we live in a material culture, and I think the material nature of our programming is inspired by value, economic value. I think that for the most part, we're about making money. We're about making our world a world of physical, material goods, to advance our pleasures, to advance our gratification, to embrace instant gratification, to stop feeling pain by finding a way to help ourselves feel good, by not understanding that pain is part of the process of miracle making. Pain is part of the process of healing. Pain is part of the process of inspiration. Pain is no less a part of the process than pleasure. But the culture doesn't grasp that. They don't know that, because the culture is basically brought up to separate. Everything is separate. We separate black from white. We separate male from female. We separate old from young. We separate. And I think that there's more of a marketing advantage to separating things, categorizing things, and to putting them into boxes. We can market to those boxes, demographic boxes, because we're all about value. We're not about intrinsic value. We're about extrinsic value. We're all about the worth. The worth is all we care about. So because we've been so brainwashed to accentuate the process of worth and value, we've lost some really important facets along the way of truth. And I think that the ultimate truth is that everything is integrative, everything is consolidated, everything is unified. And the greatest myth of all is the myth of separation.
Absolutely. Can you talk about consciousness and being fully aware, and maybe even perhaps observed awareness?
Consciousness isn't something we have. I think the Western world says, when somebody gets into a bad car accident and they're not with it, the medical people say they're losing consciousness. So we think of consciousness as something you have or don't have. I say consciousness is what you are. You don't have consciousness, you are consciousness. Your consciousness with a physical form wrapped around it. And the physical form doesn't last forever. The consciousness does. So the idea of being aware of our awareness begins with just tapping into the essence of our presence. I say, when you look in a mirror, I talk about it in the book. I encourage everybody to look at a mirror in the core of your eyes. Look in your own eyes, dead center. Look in your eyes, dead center. 10 minutes straight, not 9 minutes, not 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And don't fade away. Stay in it. Stay in it. Stay with it. And by doing that, you tap into the essence of your presence. So there's an essence to your presence that is the consciousness that you are, not that you have, that you are. And that starts the process of breaking the shell of illusion. That starts the process of the beingness of your source, the beingness of your source. So your source is being noted by itself. Your source is noting itself. It's acknowledging itself. Your source is coming alive. You're moving away from the human doing and you're becoming more of a human being.
Lucid stillness.
Lucid stillness is another way to observe your consciousness with your consciousness. Observe your awareness with your awareness. Lucid stillness. Lucid means clear. Lucid is crystal clear. There's no interruption. There's no distortion. There's no artificiality. There's only purity. It's it's the essence of that pond in the middle of nowhere. But there's not a ripple anywhere in the pond. It's that still water. And the idea that we can actually create a consciousness like that, like lucid stillness, through lucid stillness. So you create a consciousness that is representative of lucid stillness by the process of quieting your monkey mind. So quieting the chatter. The idea that you can move away from the distortion that you represent. You are not made up of distortion. You represent distortion. You can't be a distortion. You can only represent it. You represent distortions. So there's so many different distortions that are being passed and shared in the culture. I mean, you just watch 10 minutes of television and you're sharing distortions. You listen to 10 minutes of radio and you're sharing distortions. You go to a group of people at a party or a gathering, you're sharing distortions. And the interesting part about that is it can be wordless. You can share distortions wordlessly. Image, concepts, visuals. So I think we culturally in the process of sharing distortions that separate us. When separation isn't what our reality is. But the idea is that we need to think in terms of creating a lucid clarity and a purity in our approach to consciousness. That we approach our awareness, our deeper thoughts, our soul, our source, from the standpoint of quietude, from the standpoint of peace. So peace is what lucid stillness is all about. Lucid stillness cultivates peace. And when there's peace, you become more real in terms of who you are, what you are. You're a source. You're pure energy. You're pure consciousness. You're the essence of your perception. You're the essence of your observational self. So it's a purity. It's a purification goal, an aim of purification. You're aiming to purify. You're aiming to clarify. You're committed to the notion of removing all the clutter. You're committed to the notion of just being the essence of what you are without the noise. When we're essence without noise, we're perfect.
That's beautiful. And you can find that stillness in probably many ways, but probably one is meditation, correct?
Yes. Meditation, but I think there's an important point to be made here. Again, we've typically compartmentalized because we're separatists. We always separate things. So we tend to separate our consciousness from our mind, from our body, our physical form, if you will, our spirit, our soul. Everything's separate, compartmentalized. One of the most important things to really understand about meditation, we must bring our heart into meditation. I say meditation needs to be emotional. Emotional meditation. Bring your heart, bring your emotions into the meditation process. Bring your excitement into meditation. I think when you bring your heart into meditation, you transform into superconsciousness.
I love that. The importance of imagination and how it can help guide or create better futures for ourselves.
There's two primary actions in the universe of energy. In the universe of energy, there's expansion and there's contraction. And we can set those into motion. We can actually inspire expansion. We can inspire contraction. So I think what you're talking about is more contraction based, or expansion based, rather, expansion based. So when we expand, we open ourselves up and become more accessible to taking things in. So that's a beautiful receptivity state. So receptivity and expansion go together beautifully. So by opening up or expanding our presence field, and then by being receptive and committed to being receptive to that which is divine, it's the perfect way to advance ourselves. We can view ourselves. We become whole. We become the wholeness that we often espouse to in our lives. And everybody wants to be holistic. Everybody wants to eat holistically and exercise and all this stuff. It's all great. But I think wholeness begins with a conceptualization at a deeper level of awareness, at a consciousness level. Conceptualization of wholeness says that I am more than an I. And I think that one of the important things we talk about in the book, The Way of Miracles, is to overcome the identity crisis. The single most important thing we need to do in our lives is overcome our identity crisis. You have a whole world right now that doesn't know who it is, doesn't know what it is. It's totally clueless about what it is. It's always been that way, but now it's come to the surface. Now the pressure's on. And I think that identifying our I is the beginning of a transformational turnaround. I think we heal the whole planet with this book. That was the intention. And I think to inspire people to look in that mirror and to connect with the essence that we talked about. And then to embrace the notion that we are an I that is eternal, an I that is perfect, an I that is divine, an I that has no limitations, an I that is super conscious. So the I needs to be re-identified, because most people think of their I as their ego, their personality, their nationality, their political influence, their tendencies, their habits, their hobbies, their assets, their strengths. But identify your I. Says you're starting this whole process over. You're throwing out all the garbage. You're bringing it back to this concept of just tapping in to the original source that you are. The original source that you are is eternal. It's taken on many forms. It's like Einstein says, energy can be neither be created nor destroyed, only transmuted. So you can only transmute the energy of I. The energy of I is continually redefining itself over and over and over. And we think when we die, we're dead. We're not dead. We're redefining our I. We're manifesting in a different transmutational form, or formlessness. Take your pick. The point is, we need to go through an understanding of redefinition of our I, repositioning of our awareness about I.
That's well said. Very well said. You mentioned that time and space are an illusion. Can you touch on that?
Well, the beautiful thing about quantum mechanics, is that it changes the whole game. It changes the whole game. It's kind of like prior to my awareness of quantum mechanics, I used to think if a tree fell in the woods and I wasn't there to see it, it happened. Because I have implicit trust in whoever told me that it fell. I don't have that trust anymore. And the good news is I don't need it. Because I know that if I'm not there, it didn't happen. So quantum mechanics tells me that my perceptors, my receptors, my perceptive response for reality, whether it's the material level spiritual level, whatever level, it's that energetic level, it doesn't matter where it is. It's all energy based. And for me to basically live by the dictates of quantum mechanics and the energy response, energetically speaking, if I'm not there, it doesn't happen. So somebody can say, yeah, but it did. I'm listen, talk to me until you're blue in the face. If I'm not there, it didn't happen. That's the harsh reality of that situation. So to me, time and space are part of that illusion, the tree that fell. It's like the same people that are telling me the tree's falling, and the people that are telling me that the time and space are real. You know, time and space really is only as pertinent as my ability to perceive them within the context of my consciousness. And that doesn't leave a lot of room to go beyond that. I mean, I don't need to go beyond that. I don't need to question whether they're right, whether the tree really fell. I mean, I feel that there's an absolutism to presence. Presence is an absolute. So the absolutism of my presence dictates the reality that it's surrounded by.
And with that being said, then the importance of staying in the now and understanding the permanent state of now.
One of the things I talk about in the book is the permanence of now. The permanence of now. So to think that we can actually, back to expansion and contraction, we can expand limitlessly in the context of now. So only in the context of now can we expand without limitation. There's no limits. We can become expansive as we wish. Game is wide open for you. So it'll take you in, and it'll let you play whatever level you want to play at. But I think that the objective is to understand that only that can only happen in now. So I say this, back to the illusion of time and space. I can actually have the belief that now just repeats itself over and over and over. There's focus when I think of it that way. There's completion, there's completeness when I think of it that way. There's wholeness when I think of it that way. Now is complete, now is whole, now is entirely unto itself, comprehensive, universal reality. And I can think of it as that if now keeps happening, it appears to look like time. It gives the impression of being what you perceive as, or somebody perceives as time. If they have the need to perceive that as time, that's their business. But the objective is to understand that you can only fill a moment when you're fully occupied in the presence of the moment at hand. So the moment at hand is only completable, is only reachable in a holistic way, in a complete way, by my filling it up. So I don't go beyond that. I think that I don't see time as passing like this little escalator. I see it as now being repeated over and over. And I think after you leave in this material life, you go beyond into the afterlife. I think that's when you continue to become part of the flow of now. Now just repeats itself over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that gives you the freedom to expand without limitation. That's the beautiful part of now. Time can't do that. Time limits that. Time places great constraints and great limitations on you. The continuation of now gives you a wide open door to do whatever you want.
That's an interesting viewpoint about time. I really like that. You're always in the now, repeating over and over and over.
Yep.
I love that. The correlation with disease and the mind.
I think there's a connection that I like to think of. Dis-ease produces disease. So when we think about ease is representative of a flow. Think of the word ease. Ease sounds like flow. It just sounds like everything is just drifting in a beautiful way. So ease is an energetic property that has a beautiful flow pattern to it. Ease is gentle, it's soft, it's like a summer breeze. Ease is a beautiful thing. Ease produces healing, it produces wellness. It's the ultimate medicine. Dis-ease is when you lack that. We've all been there. And again, to feel the pain, the suffering, the confusion, the limitation, the agony, the uncertainty, the anguish about dis-ease, says that by meditating, by evolving in my consciousness, and by elevating my spirit, I have the ability to take advantage of a beautiful process called flow, which is what produces ease. Flow makes ease. And to live, the objective again, like we said about now. Imagine that you could take now, this thing called now that's right in front of you. Imagine you could just carry that the rest of your eternity. Carry that with you the rest of your eternity. Or ease. How about the ease, the beauty of ease, the softness of ease, the gentleness of ease, the openness of ease, the purity of ease. Imagine that, put that in the same sequence, put it in the same, load it in the same direction as your NOW, your now. So ease and now, forever. Carry those forever. You don't have to stop those ever. You can actually continue. And again, think about this, because somebody say you can't do that forever. It's impossible. Here's the thing. What are you going to be like if you try? What's that going to produce from you? It's going to produce nothing but beauty. It's going to produce nothing but wholeness. It's going to produce nothing but healing. It's going to produce nothing but miracles. So let's not be too pugilistic about it. Let's keep it simple. To take those realities, to take those concepts, and to embrace them, and to open up and expand them, and to live in them, and not to debate whether you can or not. Just embrace them and watch what happens to your life.
It's wonderfully put. Can you touch on inflammation and autoimmune?
There's 150 autoimmune diseases that stem from inflammation that's chronic. Inflammation that's not chronic is perfectly healthy. It's part of the healing process. Inflammation that's chronic is disease oriented. And it's been estimated 72% of all disease from those 150 autoimmune conditions directly related to the concept of inflammation. There's another way to look at that too, and that is that your genetic map, your genetic process. It's like you got a map, a genome, if you will, like a map. So your genome is got a number of different problems associated with grandmother's sickness, grandfather's sickness, great-grandmother, great-grandfather. The lineage goes on and on and on for centuries. So you're carrying their materials, their genetic materials. And for years, it was believed that the genetic response to determination, the genetic determinancy, if you will, the determination of disease at a genetic level was 95% deterministic. So in other words, your genes are 95% deterministic of what you're going to have, what you're going to be, what you're going to suffer from, what you're going to have to contend with for disease and sickness. 95%. Well, now we know that there's something called epigenetics, which means above genes. Epigenetics says it's only 5%. Think about this. For decades, we thought that our genetic map represented 95% of what our outcomes can be. Now we know it's 5%. 5. So the key here is that with epigenetics, you can actually utilize different thoughts, meditations, prayers, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, diets that actually influence the expression of your genetic map. So you can start turning on more good genes and turning off bad genes. And that's largely based on the epigenetic reality that you can change your genetic.
Yeah, there's scientific evidence that kind of backs that up or points in that direction too, right? With people that have been in meditations and stuff that have been able to change.
Yeah, Bruce Lipton did a lot. Bruce Lipton did a lot of that work.
Exactly.
but it's incredible. I mean, I think when you think about nutrition, there are three categories. There's prostaglandin 1, prostaglandin 2, prostaglandin 3. Prostaglandin 1 are neutral. And again, fats produce hormones. You can't have a hormone without a fat. So vitamin F, essential fatty acid, and each one of these three categories is producing a hormonal outcome, and an icosanoid hormone outcome. So inflammation is produced by icosanoid hormones, which are produced by fats. So there's neutral, column 1, neutral. Column 2 is inflammatory. Column 3 is anti-inflammatory. So the fats that are neutral in column 1 are linoleic acid. The fats that are inflammatory in column 2 are arachidonic acid. The fats that are anti-inflammatory in column 3 are alpha-linolenic acid. So you basically have three different groups of fats that are producing downline hormones that come from foods. So the inflammatory foods are peanuts, red meat, egg yolks, dairy products, corn products, sugar. Those are your primary inflammatory foods. So when I work with a patient to try to get the inflammation down, we get rid of those. The other thing is column 1 are neutral, linoleic acid. Things like chicken, turkey, whole grain products, beans, legumes, things like that. But here's the beautiful thing there. They stay neutral unless you convert them with DGLAs, dihomogenolinolenic acid. And they're fats like evening primrose oil, borage oil, even black currant oil. These oils will actually convert your inflammatory fats, I should say your neutral fats, into anti-inflammatory fats. So you can actually take column 1, which is neutral, and you can cultivate it into an anti-inflammatory influence with taking 1,000 milligrams of evening primrose oil, borage oil, or black currant oil. Column 3 is anti-inflammatory. So fatty fish, organic vegetables and fruits. I think those can be supported too with fish oils, flax oils, things like that. Alpha-linolenic acid. So when you talk about inflammation, a lot of people we work with in our practice, a lot of patients are terminally ill patients, very sick people. We fix them, we correct them by emphasizing anti-inflammatory, increasing anti-inflammatory chemistry, decreasing inflammatory, and converting neutral.
Yeah, I think that's important information for the listeners. And that's one thing that I really did appreciate about the Way of Miracles is how you did touch on the importance of nutrition. And, that was part of the aspect of the book, which I think, can go a long way.
Well, don't forget, the mission of this book was to take the work that I do for 37 years and to try to capture the effectiveness, the life-changing effectiveness, the transformational effectiveness, and to share it with the world. So food's a big part of that.
Well said. You talk about disease and the karmic debt. I've never heard this before until reading your book. I found it pretty fascinating, though. Can you touch on that?
People are always talking about karma. It's fashionable to talk about karma. People don't understand karma. There's karma, there's dharma, and there's moksha. So karma is when you actually make bad decisions, make the wrong decisions about life, and we often have decisions to make that are important, and we often take the wrong path. But in so doing, impulsive decision making and wrong decision making can often create a reaction that's negative. So we suffer with our karma. So if you make a decision in life that you just overlook the importance of the logic of your decision, you just make a careless decision, and you pay for that, and you can pay for a karmic problem, a karmic decision making issue like that for lifetimes, many lifetimes, and many people do, and that's what a lot of the hurt, suffering, and pain are all about in our world. But there's also something called dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A, dharma. Dharma is actually when you have good results. You do good things, produce good effects, good results, loving, healing, sharing, caring, serving. These are all areas that are going to actually create more dharma. Dharma is going to strengthen your position in the universe, in your vibration, your frequency, your consciousness. Everything's going to elevate with Dharma. And then you have moksha. Moksha is when you're totally liberated from the whole process. You're not in the game anymore. You're beyond that. You've transcended beyond the push and the pull, the yin and the yang, the magnetic plus and minus, the ups and downs. You're done with that. So you do bad things, you pay for it with karma. You get sicker, and of course that produces disease. You know what I'm saying? The disease that creates disease is very karmically oriented in many cases. So you have that option. Then you have the Dharma, which is actually you're working hard at building positive influences and positive decisions and positive spiritual choices. Actually make you stronger, healthier, more ease-oriented. Then you have moksha. It's just you're out of the game altogether. You're beyond all of that. Don't need that anymore. Done. And I think that consciousness-wise, the universe works that way. This is my personal feeling spiritually, that we have the ability to put it all behind us anytime. So we can just step over that line in the sand and commit our consciousness to the highest possible level of adherence, of the highest possible level of manifest, and to actually walk into the moksha that is our total liberation. So we could choose liberation anytime. You don't have to go, this isn't like going through high school. You don't have to go through 8th grade to get to 9th grade. It doesn't work that way. You can start in kindergarten and you can spring up to graduation day. So you can actually assist yourself through the process of karma to dharma to moksha.
Is that one of the primary goals of us as energy conscious beings?
I think there's one goal. One goal is, like I said, when I have people looking in the mirror, to identify your I, to occupy your source, to know that you emanate from that source and that you are consciousness. You don't have consciousness. I think to make that consciousness connect with isness, the isness of your life, so that you can no longer forget that you are consciousness. That you can no longer forget that you're not an ego and a personality. That you no longer forget that you are the essence of pure bliss and energy. And I think that when you do that, all the other stuff happens naturally. I don't think there's 7 things to do. I don't think there's 12 goals. I don't think there's 4 things to do or 8 things to do. I think there's one thing to do. One thing only. And that is to just welcome yourself into your presence of your presence within the source, the presence that is your source. Listen, people are afraid to be God. Religion's afraid to teach that because that'll crack religion right down the middle. I mean, people are afraid to be God because they don't acknowledge the fact that they're half and half. Taoism is a beautiful philosophical approach because Taoism says there's only one singular thing, and that's the Tao, God the Father. God the Father of the Tao, that's singular, that's one thing. There's not 2 things there. Everything else is dual. Everything else has to work out its salvation by bumping heads of the duality. And it's the pain that actually brings you to liberation and moksha. So it works perfectly. But the only thing we have to do is to win that struggle, to just cross over that line and to no longer confuse ourselves with the fact that we can be God. We're free to be God. In fact, Judeo-Christian logic even says that. It's like when Christ left, he left his disciples the Holy Spirit. He left them the Holy Spirit. So I mean, there's a piece of God in everybody. Call it the Holy Spirit. I spell the word holy, W-H-O-L with an E, Holy Spirit. If you're whole spirit, then you're divine. But I think there's this guilt trip and this control politics with religion, spirituality. We're better off feeling bad about ourselves because then we can be managed, we can be controlled that way.
That's right. We're more controllable.
As long as I have more a negative opinion about myself, I'm more manageable, more controllable. I mean, God forbid that I have the power to thing. It's just to know that I'm God. When I'm in my higher self, when I'm where I belong, I'm no problems. And that would inspire more people to stay there, in my opinion. I think we need to give them a shot. I think we need to embrace it and to challenge them with it and to excite them about it. And to let them know that even if they screw up, that's the duality that's just producing growing pains. But don't stop trying to manifest as the higher source. I think, look at, would I be happier if I believed that I could actually manifest God energy and live my life that way and serve people and care about people and have compassion and love and commitment at a higher level? I mean, I can't imagine God saying, "No, that's not good. I don't want you to do that. That's not good for you." That could be a problem there, because the Pope in Rome doesn't go with that.
That's so true. So true, man. I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. So I want to read a passage from your book real quick. It was something that kind of struck me. It just struck me deeply. It's something I could relate to, and then maybe you can just touch on it a little bit. And I think you were kind of getting into that actually. And this point, it's kind of what gave me the thought to read this. But it goes, nothing avails the truth quite like brokenness. It absolves us from all grand illusion, leaving only a naked veracity that cuts to the bone. The darkness that appears to accompany brokenness is but a mirage that gives way to the resplendent light. Absolute brokenness brings you to a place where you are one with the truth.
Well, I say we break all the time. The reason we break all the time is so we can rise up all the time. So the objective is to understand that brokenness is part of the same duality as wholeness. So again, we have to stop separating. Everything separate us from God, separate the old from young, separate black from white, separate. I think when we get over that separation insecurity, and when we become souls, we become big enough to be integrated with the whole universe. And we don't have to worry about anybody taking our bread. And I think that the bottom line of that is we need to understand that we are complete within the context of our brokenness. It's easy to see that you're complete within the context of your wholeness. That's easy to see. Who can see? Show of hands. How many people can see that you're complete with your sense of brokenness? Can you see that your brokenness is part of your completeness? If you can't, you got some work to do. That's where you got to go. That's where you stop off. That's where you go back into your homework. Because brokenness is no less necessary than wholeness. Brokenness is no less powerful than wholeness. Brokenness is no less significant in your incarnation, your manifestation, than your wholeness. So again, I think that think of the Tai Chi circle, the yin and yang sign. Dark circle on one side with the light in the middle, and light circle on one side with the darkness in the middle. We tend to think about going on one side of the whole. Our life is to go to the light side. I'm going to get away from this darkness. I'm going to the light side. Let's join me over there. Let's go over there. It's a semicircle. There's no more wholeness. The part that you're on is the part you're attracted to because it seems to be good and happy and rich and famous and all that great stuff. But that part that you're stuck to, that you're clinging to, is a semicircle, half a whole. It's not the whole thing. You can't be whole. You can't be well. You can't be liberated. You can't reach your moksha. So you need to understand the integrational process of the two going together. I always tell interns and patients I work with, I say yin and yang are states that are fluid. They're always dynamic. They're not like two sides on the wall. But you have yin that's always becoming yang and yang that's always becoming yin. They're centripetal centrifugal. So they're always flowing into each other. And the key is that you understand that that's part of a dynamic that absolves you from your own madness. So if you have the courage to embrace your brokenness, to celebrate your brokenness. That's even better. Celebrate your brokenness and find your liberation.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. All right, Doc, I know you're busy, man. I got one last question for you. Can you touch on where Western medicine has gone wrong, and, you know, maybe, you know, and some of the things that you're doing in your work that's getting things right? Which, I mean, you talked a lot about that today already, but, you know, in general.
You got 3 or 4 days? Here's the thing. I'll try to simplify it.
Okay.
A lot of what we've talked about is the lack of connection, integral connection, integrative connection between good and bad, light and dark, yin and yang. So medicine is the ultimate digression from that reality. They espouse the notion of finding a drug, pharmaceutical drug. It can actually make your symptoms stop hurting, make things feel better. So they're in the business of turning off pain. And I think that they're in the business of turning off pain in a culture that is sick largely because they've been turning off pain for too long. So you're giving them more of you're giving more of the problem. You're not giving them the solution, you're giving them more of the problem. So people start off in the culture without anybody teaching them about how to integrate pain and pleasure and pain, yin and yang. So they become broken down, they become diseased. Then they meet up with medicine, and they're so advanced. The medicine says, we're going to work in that same direction. We're going to shut off all the stuff that hurts. So you'd be further away from solutions, not closer to resolution. But I think that the objective of just searching out the symptoms, just focusing on the symptom, making the symptoms stop, is part of madness. It's a madness. It's insanity.
Yeah, they're not getting to the root core of anything.
It's insanity to turn off symptoms. It's insanity. You don't get it. Anybody who's espousing to that, anybody who's working in that direction doesn't get it. They don't get life. They don't get the picture. They're just not anywhere near the picture. I don't want them touching you. If I fall off a motorcycle, leave me there. So here's the deal. To find the root that causes the symptoms, whether it's a virus, bacteria, whether it's poor diet, whether it's sadness that's been unchanneled, whether it's anger that's been unchanneled, whether it's fear that's been unchanneled. There's a myriad of different reasons why diseases manifest. But the objective has to be to get to the core, get to the root, what I refer to as symptomatic foundation, or the root foundation. Causal root is what I call it, causal root. So there's a causal root that you got to get in touch with in order to unfold the process, to unknot the problem. Medicine isn't doing that at all. And it's my contention that medicine at large is making us worse. I mean, there's people that are on medication that are just being stuffed in corners right now. And it's so haphazard. Take 2 of these a day. Take 3 of these a day. I mean, it's haphazard. It's a mess. It's really important that we understand that medicine is not appreciative of the humanization process and the depth of the human experience. Those things they don't care about. They don't care about them. They don't have time to care about them. They're a triage system. They just basically put the Band-Aid on you and send you out the door when you're ready to go. Sorry, you got other problems. That's your problem. Can't help you there. And psychiatry isn't much better. I mean, psychiatry is medication oriented now more than ever. At least we had healing science at one time when people gave a damn and asked questions. I don't think for the most part, they don't anymore. Just give them a drug. So that's as bad as I can state it in 30 seconds.
It's well said. Where can we find the work that you're doing and get a hold of some of your written work?
Well, there's a movie that goes with the book. The book is The Way of Miracles. And The Way of Miracles can be purchased on Amazon.com. The film is The Way of Miracles as well. The film can actually be viewed. You can actually watch it. There's a website, thewayofmiracles.com. Thewayofmiracles.com. Simple. You can actually view the film. I think you'd really like it a lot. If you want to get in touch with me, it's just markmincolla.com. It's 2 L's, Mincolla, markmincolla.com.
Thanks again for coming on the show. It's been an enlightening conversation, and just please continue doing what you're doing. We need people like you in the world, and thank you for all the great things that you do.
You're so kind. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me as well. I think you did a great interview. You did a superb job. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews. You're one of the better ones I've ever done.
Thank you.